I can only imagine if I went to the first psychologist that I went 15 years ago, and he said, "Dude, that's the DPDR. That's a really natural thing that your brain is doing, but at the wrong time. It is something that's related to anxiety, and in no time it will get better." If the first psychiatrist told me that, the first psychologist told me that, maybe I wouldn't have been like 6 months the first the episode that I had, and now it wouldn't be 3 months like. Uh, Thinking about it, and my recovery would be a lot faster.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Arthur Seto from Brazil. Arthur is 32 years old. Back in 2009, he first experienced feelings of depersonalization after a bad weed experience. It faded away in time, but then in December of last year, the feelings came back as the result of a panic attack. Arthur struggled with depersonalization disorder and its symptoms for about 3 months, but fortunately, he has since made a complete recovery. As he wrote to me in a recent email, quote, "I'm feeling great and living my life normally, getting bored, getting happy, crying and laughing, just getting back to normal," end quote. And Arthur is with us today to talk about his experience with and recovery from depersonalization disorder. Arthur, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Sean. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's lovely to speak to you, and thank you for being on the channel. Arthur, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Arthur. I'm 32 years old. I live at Santana de Parnaíba, which is a little city located like 20 miles from São Paulo. I work with IT, which I love. I recently got married, and now I live with the love of my life, which is not my wife, but my dog, Pingo. Uh, I'm a little bit of a geek as well, so I like playing a lot, and at my PlayStation, at my computer. I like TV shows, series, and also I like reading a lot, like fantasy books and horror books. So big Stephen King fan, Margaret Atwood, all those things you shouldn't read while you're having an anxiety attack.
I am a huge Stephen King fan as well. I am. Oh man,
Really?
he has. Oh, I love him. I love him. He has a new book of. I especially love his short stories. He has a new book of short stories coming
Holly,
out. Is that what it's called? There's a new one coming
Holly
out.
is the last book from him.
Oh, is it? Okay. Oh, I don't. I haven't read that one, but there's a new collection of short stories coming out later this year. That's
Nice.
I'm so looking forward to. I absolutely love his work. And also
Nice.
I was saying that like me being from Ireland and you being from Brazil, there's a lot of Brazilian people living in Ireland. And it's
Yeah.
so good. Irish people and Brazilian people get on really, really well. I think we both have a very kind of positive mindset, and
Yeah.
we both really like to party as well. So there's always a good
Exactly.
connection there.
Party and football. The two main things
Party
in
and
life.
football, although I do think the Brazilian football team is marginally better than the Irish football team at the moment. But the Irish
Yeah, as you
rugby
can
team is
see,
really
I'm a Brazilian stereotype, like Fluminense again. So
Oh
everything I
well.
want my Fluminense is from my club.
Nice. And you were recently on your honeymoon, Arthur?
Yes, exactly. I spent like 2 weeks traveling within Brazil. So we went to the mountains at first. We thought it was going to be really chilly, but nope, it was Brazilian weather, so summer all the time. And then we went to the beach at Ilhabela, an island here in Brazil, which was really nice as well.
Nice. That's fantastic. Um, Arthur, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with DPDR and how did it start for you? Maybe back with your experience of us back in 2009 first.
Sure. Well, the first time I had it, I was 17 to 18 years old, and I was going through a really stressful moment because I just was moving out from my parents' place, to another city because I was attending a new college. So I was away from my parents, away from my friends for the first time. So it was a really stressful moment for me. And I didn't enjoy the college as well. So I just spent 6 months there. But when I got there, I started to blend in with the cool kids. So I started smoking weed with them. I must have smoked like 4 or 5 times as a whole. And the first few times I didn't feel anything, just a lot of hunger. So I just smoked weed and ate 10 bowls of cereal and just got okay. And I didn't feel high or anything, but I just felt the munchies. So the last time that I smoked, I felt pretty weird because I can remember the time as well. I was at my place hanging out with a friend from Uruguay, and we were going to the bar to meet some friend of ours. So we were hanging out, and he just took out a joint, and he said that it was a little bit stronger than the last ones that we smoked before. So I didn't I didn't thought much of it, so I just started smoking it like it was a cigarette, and it was a mistake because after a little while, we started walking to the bar. It was a walking distance from our place, like 2 or 3 blocks. And in the middle of the street, I told him, "Man, I forgot my keys at home. I must go back." I was starting to have a little panic attack. And he said, okay. I just turned back and went on home. And I don't know why, when I reached my place, I started closing all my windows, all of my doors, locked everything, light up all my rooms, and then I started panicking a lot. And I think it was the first time that I met the PNDR because I felt like I was in a dream. I didn't know if it was the weed that was doing that to my brains, and I started throwing up a lot. So I just wanted to sleep it off. And then I got to my bed and tried to sleep it off, but as all histories go, it didn't come off the next day. So I woke up the next day feeling really weird as well. I thought I was still high from weed. I thought I don't know, I destroyed my brain or something like that. And that was the start of a 6 month struggle with the PNDR. And as I said before, I left that college. I didn't like it as much. Before the PNDR episodes, I was already thinking about dropping that college. So I left there and went on home with my parents again, but the feelings of the PNDR stayed. So I remember that I was trying to talk to my parents, with my friends about it, but naturally they didn't know what it was. So every time I talked about it, I felt a little bit ashamed because I thought I destroyed my brain because I had drugs, you know? And the thing that my father told me to do was to search for a psychologist. So that's what I did. And I think it was the lowest of my first experience with the PNDR because when I went there, I was talking about how I was feeling, about the feelings of dread, about the feelings of seeing the world through a pair of glass and seeing myself in the third person. And I think so, any person vaguely familiar with the PNDR could direct it to an anxiety disorder, but I remember that he just shrugged his shoulders like he was talking to a serial killer of some kind, and he said, "Man, I can't help you, but I think my friend can." And he handed me out a card of his friend, which was a psychiatrist. He said that I had to take drugs for my condition. And since I was 17 to 18 years old and I never had drugs for any kind, for depression or of any kind of stuff, I felt really bad. I thought maybe I really did hurt my brain. But I left that building and dropped the card on the trash bin and just went on home and tried to another appointment with another psychologist. And I went to another psychologist. That time was a little bit different, but nevertheless, it was not helpful at all because I went there and I started talking about what I was feeling. And she started asking me about my relationship with my father, with my family and stuff. And man, by that point, I didn't want to talk about my relationship with my brother or my father. I just wanted to know why I was feeling the way that I did. And she couldn't point it the direction of anxiety as well. So that was another time, which was another flaw for me. And I never went back again. And I started thinking that maybe I should live on with it. So that's what I did. I started living on with it, and I had like DPDR for 6 or 8 months. And I remember that by the end of that year, a little bit close to New Year's Eve, I thought, man, it's been like a week or two that I don't think about it. So I may as well be cured. So I went on with my life. I didn't know about the PNDR. I didn't know it was anxiety-based condition, but I just lived on with my life and it got better instantly, instantly no, but it got better along the way, for those 6 and 8 months. And I got better. I started living on with my life normally until last year.
It's a very common thing that people experience, that they might have it when they're younger once, or even more than once, but that in they just tend to focus away from it long enough for it to kind of fade away and stop. And it tends to be a bit easier when you're younger because you tend to be more easily distracted. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's certainly a frustrating experience to speak to your psychologist and have them basically say, I can't help you. And
Yeah.
yeah, it must have been quite a frightening thing to go through. Um, but anyway, so you'd gone through that, Arthur, and you felt that it was behind you, as scary as it was. So what happened in the meantime?
Well, for those 15 years, I lived normally. It was okay. So I went back to college and stuff, started studying marketing. I started to work. I was in my internship. Then I started working with IT and stuff. But by December of last year, it hit me again, but not because of drug induced. Actually, after I had the DPDR episode, I never touched drugs again. I don't drink as well. I just smoke cigarettes. So I think I became afraid of losing control, from my mind. And then I never touched drugs again. But last year, December, um, I was going again through a really rough patch because the company I work at was really going through dire straits. So we had many layoffs along the year, like 5 or 6, and the last one hit pretty close to home. So my boss got fired, and uh, after much therapy, I knew what he meant to me. So it hit me pretty hard. And I'm also a really healthy guy. So I work out a lot. I go to the gym. I run. I swim. I eat healthy. But by that time, since we're going through those layoffs, we started working a lot. So I was working 24/7. I was eating not healthy. I was like eating pizza on a Tuesday. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped running at the streets and stuff. So and I was also drinking a lot of caffeine because I already drink a lot of coffee. And alongside it, I started drinking Monster Energy drink, which I love. It's the mango loco flavor. It's beautiful. It's great, but I never touched it again after my anxiety attack. But I was drinking like 2 cans a day, so it was like a liter of it. So I don't recommend it. And uh, after 2 or 3 weeks in that routine, uh, by Friday, I went out with my wife to eat something at the shopping mall, and then we went back. I remember that I was feeling a little bit dreamy, but I blamed it on my routine that I was tired and stuff. And the next day, I woke up having a panic attack, which I never had before. And my wife wasn't at home. She was walking the dog, and I was all alone at home. And I remember that I was feeling very scared of everything, so I couldn't look out my window. I couldn't look at forks and knives. My thoughts were racing very much. I couldn't hold on to a thought, and all of them were really dreadful. Like, what's the sense of having my hands? how come I'm lifting my hands right now if I want? What's the meaning of smell? What's the meaning of hearing? And all those, I think, personalization stuff. Um, and then I started throwing up a lot, and I was panicking, and my heart was pounding. I was sweating a lot. So 15 or 20 minutes later, my wife got home, and since she makes like therapy once a week for years, she told me that what I should do is write down all the symptoms that I was having by that time. So I sit down, I started writing it. It helped me a lot. I think I wrote like 3 or 4 pages, but then I went on to the internet, which I couldn't have in 2009, on YouTube to search for anxiety attacks and panic attacks and stuff. And that was the first time that I reached the PNDR term. First, I looked upon Brazilian YouTube channels, and there's a really huge channel of a psychiatrist in Brazil. And when he started talking about anxiety attacks and the PNDR, I had that meme moment from Leonardo DiCaprio, like, that's it, man. That's what I'm feeling. He talked about seeing the world through a pane of glass. He started talking about how you're feeling like you're in a dream, but you're not. And but then he talked about the cause of it. And that's when it got weird because he said that you start having that DPDR episode because when you're having a panic attack, you started breathing in a really shallow way, so less oxygen comes to your brain, and that's why you have the PNDR episode. Looking at hindsight, I can't tell how much wrong that is, and how much it could be harmful for me because the first thing I thought was, well, since I'm a smoker, maybe I destroyed my lungs, maybe I destroyed my brain, maybe I'm having a heart attack, maybe I'm having a stroke. And then I started making appointments with all kinds of medical professionals. But by that time, that same day, my wife, which is a medical professional, she hooked me up with a friend of hers, which is a psychiatrist, and I started talking to her, and I talked about DPDR, and she said, "Well, maybe that's it, and probably it's because you're having a panic attack, which is a anxiety-related symptom as well. So I can hook you up with sertraline, but you will be more anxious than you are right now for a few weeks." And by that time, I thought, well, that's impossible because I never felt so anxious in my life and I'm having panic attacks. So I might as well start taking medicine for it. And I started taking sertraline. And that was the beginning of the worst weeks of my life, actually. I still take sertraline. I can recommend it or say it helped me or not, but the first weeks are the hardest. And that was what built up all my symptoms from anxiety as well, not just the PNDR. The first few days, I started not being able to sleep. So I went to bed like 10 or 11 p.m. and I could sleep for just 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. And I woke up sweating bullets, having suicidal, not thoughts, but dreams. It was really 24/7. I was having panic attacks in my dreams. So I woke up having panic attacks. And I remember that I felt like physically the adrenaline coming out of my brain and going through my body. So the thing that I could do was just wake up, and my building has a good leisure space at the first floor. So I went there like 2 in the morning, started walking for 4 or 5 miles, and I was writing down on my diary and stuff, but I couldn't stop. And I also stopped eating. So I lost 6 kilograms, which is roughly 13 pounds, because I think that I blame it upon the PNDR because I looked at food and started thinking, what's the meaning of food? Why is it fuel to me? Why humans do need food? So I didn't eat. Um, I started having panic attacks like 4 or 5 times a day. So by then I didn't know what it was, but after reading about it, I can tell it was panic attacks because I was like hanging out, I was sitting, smoking a cigarette, and then all of a sudden I felt the adrenaline coming out of my brain, going through my body, and I instantly have feelings of dread. I instantly had to walk. I instantly couldn't stop standing still. So I was having it like 4 or 5 times a day, and it was awful. And thinking about right now, I can't I think describe exactly the feelings. I think it's state specific memory, I guess the term is, right, Sean? And that's about it. So I can't pinpoint every symptom, I guess, but the main ones were that the physical symptoms of anxiety, and then the PDR were much more feeling like I was in a dream, like I was seeing through a pane of glass, and I started panicking a lot about it because I thought I was not in control of my body, and the thing that uh, triggered me the most was talking to people. So even if it was by phone, by a Zoom chat, or talking to my wife, talking to my dog, all those things made me feel panicky. So I don't know. I thought that people could see through me. Like, this guy is having a panic attack. This guy maybe having a mental breakdown and stuff. And then I instantly got panicky and just want to leave the room, And I spent 2 or 3 weeks that way, and I don't blame only the sertraline, of course, but I was having sertraline. I was getting more anxious than I would normally would, and I was having like half the dose that I was supposed to have, and then after a week or two, I started having to double that amount. So that made me the symptoms linger for a little longer. So I guess I stood that way the worst weeks of my life until it was February, and then I started getting better.
What was the lowest point in the whole experience, Arthur? Is there something that stays with you?
Yeah, yeah. I think there's two of them. The first one was like 2 weeks after I had that panic attack, 1 week after, and I started feeling a little bit better at some points. It's like 5 minutes of happiness, and then the other times I was feeling pretty lousy. And in one of the times, I remember talking to my wife and said, I'm feeling a little bit better. And she said, well, do you want to practice? Want to go to a restaurant and stuff? I said, okay, sure, let's do it. I'm like standing at my place, feeling panic for the whole time. So it will be good if I leave my home for a while. So we went to a restaurant, which we love, which we go a lot. And then when I seated there and I started reading the menu, I started reading like things that I didn't want to eat. I was at that phase that I couldn't eat, and everybody was talking, so it was really a loud ambient. And my wife looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I must leave. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I think I will go crazy if I stand here." So we went on home. We went to a drive-through of McDonald's, and then we went back home. And that was pretty harsh. But the lowest was at Christmas Eve. So I was at my parents' place. Actually, my boss was pretty good to me. She said that I could have 2 weeks leave because I had that panic attack. So I took them, and I was staying at my parents' place. And at Christmas Eve, we were going to my sister-in-law's place to have dinner there. So Marina went from here, Santana de Paranaíba, to the place where my parents live and stuff. And I remember that I was watching a movie, trying to sleep, and I couldn't sleep. And I started feeling a little bit dreadful, but I thought, man, I must face it. I must do it. And it was exactly the day that I was doubling the amount of sertraline that I was taking. So we went to my sister-in-law's place, and there was a lot of people that I talk a lot, but it was my family and stuff. But as soon as I got there and saw 10 or 15 people, I started panicking a lot. And I looked at my father, and he looked at me. He said, "Are you all right again?" and I said, no, I must go home, man. I can't stand it. I can't stand talking to people. And I just went home again. So I went there. I didn't dinner and stuff. My wife went on with me. She slept with me. She didn't have dinner as well, and I just slept. And that I think was the lowest point of my anxiety.
It's something I can very much relate to. Was going to, I went to a family event. I went to a wedding a couple of months into DPDR, and this was really before I kind of understood what was happening, or before I kind of had a handle on it. And it was just awful. I was just terrified. Like, and you feel under pressure to be social, and to, these are people who know you, like, and they know that you're, I mean, and even talking to you now, like, you're obviously a chatty guy. You're fun. You're a great communicator. And then you kind of go into this, a social situation, and you just feel terrified, and you can't connect to these people, and you just want to withdraw. And I remember I found that incredibly difficult. Um, Something else you mentioned, and actually going back to something you mentioned towards the start of the interview, Arthur, was when you were talking about smoking that joint and smoking it like a cigarette. This is something. This is like exactly what I did with the joint that I smoked to set things off for me back in 2005. It was just like, I was like, oh, this is fine. Like, it's, and then, and when you smoke it like that, you don't give yourself enough time to kind of judge the effects of it. So you've smoked like half the joint, and then it all hits you, and then it just escalates. It's it was a hard lesson to learn,
A really hard lesson.
Oh man, a really, really tough lesson. But and then and something else I just made a note of that you mentioned, Arthur, was the thing of having panic attacks in your dreams. And this was something that, like, I remember, funnily enough, actually, the first time that happened to me was when I was at that family event in Scotland. It was a wedding, family wedding, because we were there for like maybe three nights or 4 nights or something. And I just basically panicked for 4 days. But I remember one of those nights, I woke up in the middle of the night into like a dark room, and I woke up from a nightmare in which I was panicking, and then woke up panicking and feeling intense depersonalization, and just thinking to myself, like, this is it. Like, I mean, if I can't even get away from this in my sleep, and that was absolutely terrifying, So yeah, I can certainly
It becomes an obsession, right? Because when you go to sleep, you go to sleep thinking about, man, I sure hope that I'll be better tomorrow. And then you have a dreadful dream, and then you wake up feeling, am I feeling more better or worse than before? You start getting an obsession about it, right?
Yeah, and it just becomes a feedback loop of constantly checking in and constantly obsessing about it. And with dreaming about it as well. Like, at the time, that felt absolutely terrifying, but looking back on it, it's as clear as day, because what we dream about at night, what we think about during the day. So if you spend your day like thinking about football, right? There's a strong chance you'll have a dream about football, But that's neither a good nor a bad thing. It's just that your brain is processing the thing that you thought about during the day. So when we spend the day thinking about depersonalization, derealization, anxiety, then it's not unusual at all to have a dream about that. But when you're going through it first, it just feels like, well, this has now like invaded my dreams, and there's no escape from it whatsoever. But with all that said, anyways, Arthur, how did your recovery start?
Well, firstly, I think I got educated about the DPDR thing because, as I said, the first YouTube channel that I saw DPDR was really wrong about it. So I started reading about it in another channels, and there were different approaches for the same subject. And I think in the first few weeks, it's good to get educated about it as long as you take it as a light way, not obsess about it. So when I started reading about it, they have some holistic approach, such as Sindelka. You have a psychologist approach, and you have more of a human approach, such as yourself and Paul Davids. And those two books, The P Manual and At Last Alive by Paul Davids, were the ones that helped the most, I think, because it was the look of a person that is not a medical professional and stuff, but had the DPDR episodes, had the anxiety attacks, had anxiety episodes and syndromes, and what they did to to recover. And it was great, man, because I think it's much more about the don'ts than the do's. So when I started reading about anxiety, firstly I read Paul Davids, and he talks about anxiety as a whole. So I started to know what panic attacks were. I started to know what social anxiety was, and and it was great for me because he's alongside a term that was the anxiety backpack. I love that term. That was when you're starting to read about it, many people will handle you medicines, will handle you drugs, will handle you rituals for you to do when you feel anxious and stuff. But those are the things that you when you do them, you will just feel more anxious because the more you feel about it. So when you feel anxious, like close your eyes and think about football. Every time I was going to think about football, I was thinking about anxiety and stuff. So yourself and Paul Davids says the same thing. I'm sorry to be a broken record about it, but you must learn to embrace it and live alongside your anxiety. And when you're reading it, I remember that when I was reading it, like you must embrace anxiety and stuff, you must live with it. I remember that I was thinking, man, how is this guy crazy? How come I would do something like it? I'm like a, a doom in my head and stuff. And the next chapter, it is, I think you have like dreadful thoughts in your mind, and you think, how come I should do it? Because I'm having dreadful thoughts, and you must start living your own life. So you recovery started for me when I started doing the things that I did, uh, as hard as it was. So when I talked about the episode in my in Christmas at my sister-in-law's place and stuff, that was a time which I had to respect my own mind and my body. So I don't think that I was wrong going home, but I would be wrong if I didn't start to practice it alongside my wife, alongside my friends, and until it starts to become natural again. And when I think about the PNDR recovery, I really think about like it's learning to live again, because I have a little nephew, which is like 1 year old, and until he was 6 months old, he couldn't interact with the world. He didn't know what the world was. And I thought maybe I'm having that same thought. What is the world? Because I'm having thoughts like, what is a car, man? How they manufacture that car? How many years of engineering? Oh my God, how come we're living in a giant bowl of dirt and water? And so I started questioning a lot about it. And uh, it's not that I was enlightened, because I think the first thing you notice, maybe I become enlightened, maybe I found some hidden truth about the world that anybody see, but nope, you're just panicking, man. You're just having a panic attack.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then after reading a lot, I also had I started therapy. Actually, a huge shout out to Carlos, my therapist, which helped me a lot as well. But I think the books, after a while, which you start to become educated, you start to feel like I don't need that anymore, is when a recovery starts. But you don't need to push it, because I think I listened to your book because I couldn't read, I couldn't focus. I listened to the P manual like 4 or 5 times, and And Less Alive by Paul David as well, like 3 or 4 times as well. But I started listening to it until it become, you know, a broken record. I know I must live my own life. So okay, I will live my own life. I will start going to the gym. As hard as it is, I will start talking to my parents. I will start talking to my wife. I will start hanging out with my dog and stuff. As hard as it is, until I learn to live again. Actually,
That's really wonderful. I'm so happy to hear it, Arthur. And so, what did it feel like, kind of getting back to normal? I mean, what did the recovery process feel like? Because some people ask me a lot, is like, was this something that just kind of happened in the background, or did you start to have days where you noticed it wasn't there, or what did the process actually feel like for you?
so actually started with that, that 5 minute rule, which is you started doing something and you don't notice in those 5 minutes that you're anxious, you're having a DPDR episode and stuff, and then it became 10 minutes, and then it became 1 hour, 2 hours, and even when I was, doing something that I usually like, which was, I don't know, running in the streets, was started thinking about it. But I said, okay, I will go on with my life. I will go on running. But then I stopped thinking about it, started thinking about my life, started thinking about my job, started thinking about my dog and stuff. And, and I said, oh man, it's been like 2 hours since I don't think about it. Okay. And I wouldn't, commemorate about it. I wouldn't feel bad about it. I would just acknowledge it. No, oh, I felt 2 hours that I didn't think about it. Okay, so I will make my own dinner and stuff. So I started to distract myself with little things. I started making dinner. I started doing the things I used to do. I started working again. So, and then one day I was feeling like, man, it's been like a whole day since I don't think about it. Great. And I can't even pinpoint the first day that I woke up and didn't diagnose myself like I was feeling better or feeling worse. Like I was just waking up. It's natural, you know? So it became like 5 minutes, but then it became like a week or two. And I won't lie to you, I had some few fat setbacks. But the first ones were a little bit more terrifying. But the last one I had, I think it was 2 weeks ago, but I almost felt happy about it. It's weird to say that, especially for people that's having a panic attack right now, having the PDR episodes. But I feel quite grateful because I remember that I woke up and I remember feeling that, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. But no, I just slept like 3 hours. So I must have slept just a little bit. So it must be it. So even though I'm having or not having a panic attack, I would just sit down, grab my phone, start playing like homescapes, and then I'll be better. And then I started playing homescapes for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I was already out of my panic attack, which I don't know if it was, but if it was, okay, I will keep calm, cool, and collected, and just go on with my life and distract myself with those silly things, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Um, so something that people ask me, Arthur, um, now that you've recovered, is getting back to normal really getting back to normal?
Oh man, I was really looking forward to answer this question. And yes, it is. I must have listened to all the interviews that you made, and I remember that every time anybody said, yes, it is. I remember I was thinking, no, it's impossible. I just discovered a new secret of life. I just discovered a new secret of the world. And so it's impossible to get back once you're in the matrix, you know? But yes, it's really coming back to normal. I remember that it's something that therapy helped me a lot. That I felt those triggers when I thought, well, I'm having a bad time. I'm not an outgoing person as I was. I'm not as loud as I was. And then when I noticed that people noticed that in me, I remember feeling triggered. So I instantly have anxiety attacks and panic attacks and stuff, those social anxiety episodes. But then I thought, well, it's okay being not okay for a while. So once I embraced that as well, I stopped trying to uh, make me feel that way again. Like I'm had to be the old Arthur and stuff. But now that I'm back to normal, I think that getting back to normal, it is really get back to normal, but it's a little bit better because I have some, uh, you know, uh, some some things that I learned along this journey that really made me feel made me a better person. So I remember talking to my wife and I asked her, well, I'm not the old Arthur, but do you enjoy the new Arthur? And she said, I'm sorry to say that, but I enjoy the new Arthur better because you're more you're being more attention to me, you're being more careful. And it's funny because when you're having a DPDR episode, you're thinking you're in automatic, but it's actually the opposite. Yeah, you're living like life in an automatic way, and when you have those episodes, it makes you feel like more down to earth. Um, and then I start caring about my relationships a lot more. And then I have a deep empathy now for people that have had like burnouts at work, like anxiety attacks and stuff. Because when you're a person that you never had those experiences, maybe you think, Peter had a anxiety episode. Oh, poor Peter, but tomorrow he'll be better. No, man, it's a really a tough journey. So I started becoming more empathetic about those people, you know. So every time I see at work or at my social circle, people struggling with anxiety or with burnouts, I know that it's not something mild. It's something really serious. And the more you uh, uh, talk about it, the more you get educated about it, I guess the better. So I guess that's it. Now I can say that I left the PNDR a better person than I am than I was before. You know.
Yeah. um, and I couldn't agree more. I think that like when you recover, you do essentially get back to normal, but also because you've been so intimately familiar with anxiety, you kind of prevent it from becoming a problem again, because the reason it became a problem in the first place was because of not recognizing it and thinking I must be going crazy, I'm living in a dream or whatever. So when you have that awareness of it, you'll always have it, and you prevent it from like turning into an issue again in future, which is so it actually strengthens you. And absolutely with the empathy thing as well. Like I remember when I was younger, but like before experiencing anxiety, like I would have had an awareness of like mental health problems or people who are going through depression or anxiety. And I kind of would have thought the same. I wouldn't have said it out loud, but I would have thought like, well, look, if you're depressed, like or if you're feeling anxious, you just kind of need to sort yourself out or whatever, very, very kind of basic, ignorant kind of views about it. And then going through it, you learn that like, it's not like this can happen to anybody. Like, I mean, regardless of your personality type, regardless of your upbringing, like panic attacks and anxiety are the most common things in the world. And since having gone through it myself, I mean, obviously I speak to people all the time who are going through something similar, like, but even people who would be in, family or friends or whatever, going through something similar, like the sense of empathy and connection that you have with them is really powerful and profound and can be extremely helpful as well. So it's like not only does it strengthen you, but it gives you a sense of empathy going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Arthur, how was the DP manual helpful in your recovery?
Well, I think it pointed me out to the recovery, I think, because again, it's much more about the don'ts than the do's. So I started taken my anxiety backpack of all my rituals and stuff and just left out on the side and just stick on with the things that would help me. And there's the manual itself, but the things that you talk about anxiety as a whole, about explaining what is the PNDR and stuff, really helped a lot as well because it was the time that I felt not alone for a long time and not special. I think that's the main point here because when you start having those panic episodes, you start thinking, well, maybe I had it worse than Sean or had it better than Sean and stuff. You started comparing yourself, you know. But even though you have, I don't know, all the symptoms that I had, or one or two more, or one or two less, it is the PNDR. You have to accept it. You have to accept that you're not special in any kind. And if you're not special, the recovery will come the same way to you, which is distracting yourself, trying not to think about it, and living on with your life. And the thing that I remember the most about the P manual is the P pep talk. And there's a line there which I always remember. And that is when you talk about how the medical community doesn't talk about a lot about it. So since it's not something that can harm you in any way, so I think they don't focus too much attention or research about it. But I can only imagine if I went to the first psychologist that I went 15 years ago, and he said, "Dude, that's the PNDR. That's a really natural thing that your brain is doing, but at the wrong time, you know. So you're in the fight flight mode, but in the wrong time. But your brain is really good, is healthy, but it is something that's related to anxiety, and in no time it will get better as long as the anxiety get better as well, dude. Probably I would think about it like 5 minutes or an hour. But since a medical professional told me that it was really simple, like 70 or 80% of all the people in the world will experience the PNDR in some point of their lives. I think 2 or 3% of the people in the world experience it as a syndrome as we are. So it's really natural. It's really common. It really sticks longer because we tend to overthink about it. If the first psychiatrist told me that, the first psychologist told me that, maybe I wouldn't have been like 6 months the first the episode that I had, and now it wouldn't be 3 months like thinking about it, and my recovery would be a lot faster. So that's a really shout out as well, you know, for all the medical professionals. My best friend just got graduated as a psychologist. And I told him that, dude, if anybody tells you that, please tell that it's natural. Tell they're not going crazy and it's really natural response to anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's I think that everybody who goes through it has that period of time between when they first develop it and then when they figure out what it is. And that period of time tends to be the hardest part because you think that you're going crazy, you think there's no explanation for it, you don't even know that there's a word to describe what you're going through. And often people can, like when I speak to people, like more and more when I speak to people now, they are more likely to come across a doctor or their own doctor, therapist, or psychologist will say, "Oh, that's called depersonalization," and it's and then once you have a name for it, then you're okay. Now you're not just kind of in a whirlwind, and you actually have some kind of path forward.
Yeah.
Because that's all you want is just look. I know there's work to do, but just give me the path, give me something to start on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, your experience with having someone say to you, like, I can't help you, is just man, it's frustrating to say the least. And I'm sorry you went through that. And I had a similar experience. Not quite. I can't help you, but my doctor did just kind of say, like, it's just anxiety, which was technically correct, but I didn't get nearly the amount of information that I needed. But interestingly, Arthur, I don't know if you saw this, but I did an interview on my channel with a Brazilian psychotherapist who was doing a lot of research into depersonalization and derealization. And he's, and he, one of the problems that or researchers tend to have with studying it is that it's kind of hard to find people who have it, because the diagnoses are relatively rare for different reasons. But this guy was like finding people through like social media and WhatsApp and bringing them in and then do research that way. Which is fantastic because he'll be able
Nice.
to he'll raise awareness of it in that sense. But he's based in Brazil as well, and it's very exciting to think that like there's a new generation of researchers who are using the internet and using social media to kind of bring people together and do the research that way, which I think for a condition like depersonalization, where the diagnoses are kind of less common than just generalized anxiety, is a really, really exciting way of not just researching it, but raising awareness of it. And that's something in Brazil, so it's great to hear.
Great to hear it, because I think you were quite right when you said that you need a path, when you're feeling those symptoms of the DPDR and stuff, you're thinking you're alone. You're thinking you're going crazy and stuff. You can't pinpoint exactly what it is. But when you know that it's DPDR, and as though it's not like a magic pill which you will take and become better, but when you see that there is a path to go through and you get better, dude, it makes the whole difference. The DP manual was that for me, the path, which is not a magic pill, but is a process which you can take and get better. So that's great, man. That's great to hear.
Yeah. So Arthur, I've got one last question for you. So there's going to be people watching this interview who may be going through something very similar to what you went through. Maybe even people who are going through something that what you experienced back in 2009, or what you experienced in December and the months in intervening there. What advice would you have for yourself if you could have a chat with yourself back then? And what advice would you have for those people watching the channel?
Well, I think the main thing is that you're not special, and that's great about it, because you may feel that you have a symptom, or that and anybody has, or maybe you see another person which is talking about a symptoms that I had all of them or none of them and stuff. But at the end of the day, it is the DPDR. So like, recovery will not be a magic pill, but it will happen. And the great thing about the PNDR is that the recovery process, you don't need a surgery, you don't need to take drugs and stuff. You just need to do, the things you like to do. So how great is that? So enjoy the recovery, It may be hard to listen to it right now, but it will get better, I promise. And as soon as you find your path to started doing the things you used to do, and it will get a little bit easier each of the times. You don't want to go to a party with 15 people. That's okay. First, talk to a person, talk to your best friend, talk to your sister, talk to your mother and stuff. And then one by one, you will start living your life again. So enjoy the recovery. It's a dreadful thing to have, but the recovery is, it couldn't be better. You must do the things you like to do.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love in particular about your own story, Arthur, that so it was December that you got hit really hard with DPDR, and then by March, like 3 or 4 months later, you're on your honeymoon and enjoying it.
Exactly.
That's such. Yeah. It's really great to hear, and that you just were able to find find the path, like find your way out of it, but get back to doing, like, enjoying your honeymoon, which is like a beautiful, important thing to have, and just to be able to relax and enjoy it. But to have had that in just a couple of months is fantastic. And I know it's going to be an inspirational thing for people to hear watching the channel. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, and something that was really important, that by December I was already we were already scheduling our honeymoon and stuff, but by then I thought, dude, I must get better for my honeymoon. But the thing I can recommend as well is that don't put a date of when you must feel back to your own feet again, you know. So I didn't start thinking like I must be better by March, but I thought, if by March I'm having those panic attacks and stuff, okay, so be it. I'll be in my honeymoon. If I have some downtime or stuff, it's okay to not be okay. I will just do the things that I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the thing, like, is when you categorize anxiety as something that I need to have this beaten by this date or this time. Even that's giving it way too much power. Yeah. It's categorizing it as something that deserves your attention and your focus. Whereas when we just say, okay, well, look, I have this, it's not comfortable, but it's not going to hurt me. It's certainly not going to kill me. It's not going to drive me crazy. So if it's there, I'm going to let it be there, and I'm going to live my life as normal. And just that, thinking about it like that, starts to give you the space to let it go, which happens in the background. Arthur, it's been so lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. I'm delighted that you've recovered, that you were able to enjoy your honeymoon, and that the DP manual was helpful in that process. And I know there's going to be people watching this interview who are going to find it super helpful. And it's also just lovely to speak to another person from Brazil, and not because as I said, the last person I spoke to from Brazil was somebody kind of leading the charge and kind of raising awareness of the condition and researching into it. So to speak to somebody like you who has gone through it, although he had gone through DPDR as well, but to speak to somebody like you who is going through it, or who has gone through it and recovered as well, it's great. It's just great that this is kind of like, the awareness of it is kind of happening internationally as well. It's really wonderful to see. So thank you so much for being on the channel.
No, man, I thank you very much. You're like my superhero for saving my life, the P manual. I'm glad that the P manual is reaching a lot of people. It's already going international. And I think for a few days I will start looking at the comments here in the video, just to, if anybody has any question, if anybody wants to talk a little bit, if anybody from Brazil is having a panic attacks and stuff, because again, we have to have empathy for all of us. And after that, I think I will just go on with my life again, started looking at Fluminense games and videos, and just say goodbye to anxiety content again.
Exactly. That's the way to do it. Arthur, it's been so lovely to chat to you. Thank you so much for being on the channel, and enjoy your life post-recovery.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Take care, Arthur. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Cheers.